All right, greetings. On behalf of the UNT Division of Strategic Educational Alliances, welcome to Canvas Essentials Assessment. Today's workshop will be presented by Dave Denny and me, Tommy Tubbs. We are instructional design consultants. The intended audience for this workshop includes faculty and graduate students who assist in building or maintaining Canvas courses for UNT. There are many ways to assess student learning in Canvas, including assignments, graded discussions, and quizzes. Today, we will focus on quizzes, including both classic and new quizzes. Due to time constraints, we will not cover the quiz features, outcomes, or question banks in depth in this workshop. Upon completion of this workshop, you should be able to choose between classic and new quizzes, select an appropriate quiz type and customize the settings, including individual extra time and Respondus Lockdown Browser. You should also be able to add and configure different question types. Our agenda for today's workshop is as follows. Dave will cover classic quizzes. I will cover new quizzes. Dave will give a brief introduction to Respondus Lockdown Browser. We'll close with a Q&A session. Please add questions to the chat while we're presenting. We'll answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. This session is being recorded and participants will receive a link to the recording and the slide deck after the workshop. Now I'll hand off to Dave to introduce you to classic quizzes.
Thanks, Tommy. I just want to do a quick mic check. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to spend about the next 20 minutes showing you how to use the Canvas Classic Quiz, the original quiz engine of Canvas. I'll cover how to create a quiz, configure the settings in the Details tab, and manually create a question and add a question group. So the first thing you do is you need to enter a Canvas course. I'm in my practice course here, and then select quizzes from the navigation menu. You'll notice that I only have final exams there right now, and there's actually two. I added one from the new quiz, the part that Tommy's going to be covering, just to show you a couple of differences. Notice that the icon, the rocket ship icon, is solid for a new quiz and is an outline for a classic quiz. And also, when you publish a quiz, it turns green to let you know that. And it is important to know that regardless of what date you have set in your settings for the quiz to open and close, if it's not published, the students will never see it. So be careful with publishing. Now, up toward the right, you'll see a 3-dot menu. This is where you would manage your question banks, only for classic quizzes. From this menu, you can also reset your quiz engine choice if you chose to only see classic or only see new quizzes, and you decided you wanted to reset that so you have both choices again. This is where you would do that. You can also share quizzes to and from the Canvas Commons Learning Repository, a community type of effort. So with that, the first thing we're going to do is click on Plus Quiz Survey. And in this pop-up, you'll see you have a choice between new quizzes and classic quizzes. And I'm going to choose classic for this one. And this is where you would remember your choice for this course. And that would mean that it would lock you into that specific type of quiz engine. So I'm going to leave that one unchecked. Click Submit. And to go along with my final exam, I'm going to go ahead and create a midterm exam right now, so you can see that. So the first thing you see is a quiz title. This is student facing. This is what the students will see in their modules, assignments, or grades. So use clear descriptive names such as Week 3 Knowledge Check or Midterm Exam to help students quickly understand how this quiz fits into the course. After that, we have quiz instructions. Notice that the quiz instructions is in the rich content editor, which means you can add all kinds of media, images, and the such to this rather than just being text-based. So I'm going to go ahead and I have some instructions already saved in HTML format, which you can also use if you like to do that, but you are not required to do this. I'm going to go ahead and pop that in. And now I have some clear exam questions. It's hard to fit it all into this one screen, this small screen, but there's the instructions for the quiz. Use this space to clarify expectations, allowed resources, time limits, special directions. Clear instructions reduce confusion and support accessibility. Okay, now we're going to scroll down to the next settings. First one is quiz type. There are 4 quiz types. Graded quiz is the default. This is the most common option for assessments, and it will create a column in the gradebook. There's also practice quiz, which do not count toward the final grade. These are ideal for self-checks, formative assessment, or review activities. There's also a graded survey, which awards points for completion rather than correctness. They are often used for participation or reflections. And then we have ungraded surveys, which just collect responses without assigning points, commonly used for feedback. Those are the 4 quiz types. Underneath that, you will see assignment groups. These are customizable tags for organizational purposes. Here, I just have assignments and quizzes for my groups. This allows you to filter your gradebook view by these types. The next set of settings are called the options for the test. This first one will shuffle the answers. Avoid using this if one of your answer choices is all of the above, or else that could be your top answer and kind of be nonsensical. Next is time limit, which is self-explanatory. I can just add a time in there, and this controls how long students have once they open a quiz. The timer starts upon opening and auto submits when that time expires. You can allow for multiple attempts. This is good for practice quizzes and the such that support mastery learning. And you can also keep the highest score, the latest score, or the average score. And you can allow how many attempts they are allowed to take. This next section controls how students see their quiz responses after taking the quiz. The default is to let them see their quiz responses with incorrect questions being marked with just an X. You can let the students see the correct answer only after their last attempt if you check this one, or during a certain time window that you want to let them see the correct answers. So these are all up to you. You can have the questions display one at a time. And if you do that, you can also lock the question after answering, which means they cannot revisit and answer a question. You can require an access code, which is basically just a password that allows them to take the quiz. You can also filter by IP address. For example, if I click on this little thing here, you can see that the Sage Testing Hall IP address is already there, and I can click on that, and that would limit the students to be taking that quiz at the Sage Hall Testing Center. The last part is is assigning it. The default is everyone in all the students, everyone, but you can also type to search for a particular student, or if you have one student that requires extended time, you can put that student in there and then adjust the due dates and the available dates accordingly. But for this one, I'm just going to set the due date to be Friday, and it's available starting today. And I'm going to give them until a week after the due date for late submissions. And then I'm going to save this one. Now, it's best practices reminders that to preview a quiz before publishing, double check feedback settings for exams, start simple, add complexity gradually, and consider accessibility early. So now, if I go back to quizzes, you will see that we now have a midterm with some of the settings here. But we have no questions yet. So I'm going to go ahead and open midterm back up, edit. Then I'm going to go from the details tab where we just were to the questions tab. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to do is create a manual question, just so you can see that first. I'm going to start with new question. Now up at the top, there's a short internal label right here that you don't have to use, but this is good for you to keep track of what kind of quizzes you have. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and call this multiple choice question - question 1. And this is internal. Students do not see that. Now the question types are pretty much the common ones that I'm sure everybody is familiar with: true, false, fill in the blank, essays, matching, file uploads. But for now, we're just going to build the very most common question type that there is multiple choice. So I'll start with that, and then you notice that the question itself is in the RCE editor, so which means that you can add all necessary text, images, videos, equations, and media. So for my question, I'll put that. And default setting gives you 4 possible answers, including the correct answer. So I'm going to quickly put these answers in. Okay, there's 4 answers, and notice that I can add another answer if I wanted to, or I can take answers away by deleting. So here I have the 4 answers. Does anybody want to guess which one is the correct answer here? The answer is Iron Curtain. So that I just click on that, it gives me the green little arrow that tells me that that's the correct answer. Now also notice that for each answer, you can also provide feedback. For this pink box right there, it does that, and you get the RCE editor, so you can provide feedback if they chose that answer, this answer, or that answer. Or you can choose just a general response if they got it right, a general response if they got it wrong, or a general response regardless of whether they got it wrong or not. So I'm going to go ahead and update that question, and I'm going to save it again. Now we have a quiz with 1 question, and that's it. Okay, I want to add some more questions, but that really took a long time. So I'm going to show you how we can use banks to our advantage here. So the next, and banks and groups, by the way, groups as well. So I'm going to click on a new question group, and this is an internal title. We'll call it group 1. I want it to pick 5 questions at 2 points per question And I'm going to link this to one of the question banks that I have in this course. I have several. I'm going to go ahead and just choose chapter 1 and select that bank. Now it's linked to that. All I have to do now is create the group. And now save. And now let's preview that. Now when I click on preview, it's going to give me that little pop-up menu. And now here's the quiz as the students see it. First it's the instructions, then it's question 1. And I chose the box, and I didn't mean to do that. I meant to uncheck that. That says only deliver 1 question at a time. So the first question is the first one that we created. And I just got an error because I did not answer that one. And I'm getting some sort of error that I can't figure out why. But that is just a preview, so anyways, we'll skip over that part. Epic failure there, but you'll see if you look at the questions that I do have the 1 multiple choice that we created manually plus the group that picks 5 questions. So I'm going to try one thing real quick. Uncheck show 1 question at a time. Say, okay. I just want to make sure this preview is working okay. Okay, there, now it's working. Okay. So there's the first question, and then the question bank chose that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. And each one is chosen randomly. So every student will see a different group of questions. And with that, I will turn it over to Tommy now to talk about the new quizzes.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, so for the new quizzes, the first thing that we're going to show is how to create a new quiz. You're going to access the quizzes menu in the left-hand toolbar. And you see that I've got one existing, but the first thing I want to show you is how to add a new quiz. So we're going to click that plus quiz survey button that Dave showed us earlier. And now we're going to select new quizzes instead of classic and click submit. Once we do that, we can give this assignment a name. If I want to call this final exam, whatever. Then this is the really important option, the quiz type, because when you create this quiz, you only get to set this once. And if you do it incorrectly, you're going to have to delete the quiz and rebuild it because you can't change this once it's been created. So our options are graded quiz, graded survey, ungraded survey. So graded quiz, exactly like what it sounds like, it's going to count toward the course grade. A graded survey is going to be a participation grade only, and ungraded survey is where you're just gathering information. We can set the point value. I've chosen 100 points for this one. Assignment groups. This is going to pull from the assignment groups that you define in the assignments tab. And you can have as many of these as you want. In this case, I'm going to set this to exams. You can set how the grade is going to display in the grade book. So you can be percentage, you can be completion only, you can choose points, you can choose a letter grade or GPA scale. I usually go with points. I do recommend that whatever you decide to go with, you kind of pick one and stick with it throughout the course because it can get a little bit confusing if you're switching around between points and percentages, especially. Do not count toward the final grade. You can check this box if for whatever reason you don't want this assignment to be calculated for the course grade. Submission type, this box is going to be all grayed out. The reason for that is that New Quizzes is actually a third-party tool that's integrated with Canvas. So this is just information only. The assign to block is very similar to what Dave was showing us with classic quizzes. The default is always going to be assigned to everyone. You can choose individual students in your course. That's usually useful if you have somebody that's trying to complete it outside of the defined availability dates. Like say someone had an extended absence and you want to allow them to take it later. Setting due dates, same as Dave was showing us. We select a date. The default is going to be 11:59 p.m. You can change that to whatever you want. You can set the availability date. I'll make this available starting today at noon. And then I'm going to close this at a week from the due date, just in case I have any late submissions. Okay, once we have that ready, then we click the build button to start building our quiz. Now, rather than do this here, I'm going to go to a quiz that I've built ahead of time just to save us a little bit of time here. So we click on the build button and now we're in the build menu. The first page that it takes us to is adding questions, but what we want to make sure we have right is the settings. So we're going to click on the settings tab at the top of the page. I'm getting a warning because I've already tested some of these questions. So if you've ever had anybody do any work in the assignment, you will get that warning. So don't worry about that for now. You're going to see a little assignment saved pop up appear every time I change something because there is no save button for this feature. All of your changes are going to save in real time. So the first option that we have is shuffle questions. I'm getting a warning for that because I've included an informational text block. If you ever do that, you don't want to turn on shuffle questions because it's going to shuffle your text block as well, and it may not appear where you intended. Shuffle answers. This applies to multiple choice and multiple answer questions. So with these question types, it will randomly shuffle the answers. You can leave this turned off and you can set it at the question level and it will only shuffle for the questions where you have it turned on at the question level. So if there's any doubt, it's best to leave this off and just do it at the question level. The one question at a time option, it's very similar to what Dave was showing us in classic quizzes. The allow backtracking option, if we have this turned off, once they answer a question in advance, they will not be able to back up and revisit previously viewed questions. I'm going to leave that on for now. Require access code, just like with the classic quizzes, you can set a password. You can set a time limit in hours and minutes while they're taking the quiz or test. It's going to display a countdown timer, and once it gets to 0, it's going to submit the assignment. The timer runs regardless of whether they leave the page and reopen it. I'm going to leave the time limit on because that's going to help us when we get to the moderate settings. Detect multiple sessions. What this does is if you have students who say have the quiz open simultaneously from more than one device, it's going to give them a warning and it's also going to record that in the activity log so you could look later and be able to see if they had multiple sessions going at the same time. Filter IP addresses. Just like before with the classic quiz, we're really only going to use this when we're using some kind of dedicated testing location. Allow calculator. There is an on-screen calculator that students have access to in new quizzes. It can be basic, which is just your usual functions, multiply, divide, add, subtract. There is also a scientific calculator that gives us more advanced functions. If you teach a subject that needs that, you know what I'm talking about. This can also be enabled at the question level if you only want the calculator to appear for specific questions. Allow clearing selection. What this means on multiple choice, and you'll see that when we go and configure a multiple choice question, there are options in new quizzes where you can actually assign a penalty for an incorrect answer on a multiple choice. So you could make a correct answer worth 1 point, you could make one wrong answer worth 0 points, and you could make another wrong answer worth negative points. So you could assign greater penalties based on the quality or the relative quality of the answer. So sometimes on a multiple choice question, it's better to leave it blank than to just guess, because you might guess that one with a penalty. So in those cases, we would want to have this selection unchecked if you don't want them to be able to clear the selection, or if you do want them to be able to undo an answer, you could enable that. Show custom feedback with results. This just gives us a text box where we can display feedback once they've finished the quiz. We can disable document uploads. This applies to essay questions only. One of the options that you have on essay questions is you can allow them to type their answer in a rich content editor. And that rich content editor does have a file upload button. If you do not want them uploading files on your essay questions, you would want to enable this, and that way it just won't give them the option. Allow multiple attempts. This one has a lot of different settings. So the first setting that we have is we can select whether we're going to keep the highest grade, the average grade, the last attempt, or the first attempt. I'm going to set this to average. The next is allowed attempts. We can give them unlimited attempts, or we can limit the number of attempts, and you can change that upward or downward, or you can directly type the number of attempts in. If you want a waiting period between attempts, you're going to turn that option on, and you can set the number of days, hours, and minutes that students have to wait between each subsequent attempt. And then finally, we also have the option to build on last attempt. So if this is disabled, what's going to happen is every time they do another attempt, it's just going to be like starting from scratch. If you have this enabled, then they're going to be able to see what they were doing before, and it won't clear out their old responses. Okay, this hide results from student setting. This is the one that's very, very important that we have it configured correctly, especially if you're worried about test and question security. If you're going to want to reuse things and you want to control what the students can see after they've completed a quiz or an exam. So the most locked down setting is what you see right here. If we don't check hide results from students, it's going to show them everything. It's going to show them which ones they got right, which ones they got wrong. It's going to show them the questions. So by enabling this, now they can't see anything other than that they've completed the assignment. You can enable showing them the points, and it will show the possible points if we check this box. And if we check this one, it's going to show points awarded. And it's going to do this for the question level and for the overall. If we want them to be able to see the questions after an attempt, we're going to turn that box on. Now, this way, it will just show them the questions, but it's not going to show them their answers. If you enable show student responses, now we can control whether they can only see it once after each attempt, only after their final attempt, only once after their final attempt, or we can see the responses for all. We can also set opening and closing dates so we can create a window where they can see those. There is also a box we can check that's going to show whether they got it right or wrong. If we turn that on, we have the option to show them the correct answer. We can also control that that only displays after their last attempt. And just like before, we can set a window of date times where they're going to be able to see that. And finally, we can check the feedback box So if you have feedback enabled on those questions, it will display the feedback as well. Okay, that's it for the settings. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is moderate. The moderate tab, again, is at the top of the screen. This is where we're going to set the accommodations for students that maybe have extra time or extra attempts. And you can control this at the course level, or you can do it at the quiz or assignment level. So for this one, I'm going to click on Austin's name. If I click on their name, what I'm doing is I'm setting a course accommodation. So Austin gets 50% extra time on his assignments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to time limit multiplier, and I'm going to change the multiplier to 1.5. If he got 100% extra time, I would make that 2.0. You can also give an absolute amount of extra time. So you could say, no matter what, I'm going to give them an extra 15 minutes. Or you could also just remove the time limit altogether and give them unlimited time. You also have the option to give reduced answer choices. If you click this, what it will do is on a multiple choice item, if there are 4 or more responses, it will remove one of the incorrect responses. I'm going to save that, and you'll see here that now we've got those options displaying in this table. If I want to set something at the assignment level, I'm going to click the little edit button to the right of his name, and now I can configure additional attempts at the assignment level and say for this one, I'd rather give him 3 tries on this. Now, the time adjustments we can also set here, but the only options we get here are either additional time or removing the time limit. The time limit multiplier can only be set at the course level. And then we can also configure reduced answer choices at the assignment level as well. One thing to keep in mind is if they have course level settings and you edit assignment level, the assignment level is going to override whatever was in the course level setting. Because you can see here, whoops. Or actually, sorry, well, yeah, because I didn't configure additional attempts. Oh, okay. Let's go to build. This is where we're going to be adding questions. If you want to add a question after we've done the title and the instructions, anywhere that you see a little blue circle with a plus sign, you can insert a question. And when you click on that button, you're going to get a list of question types. There are 12 question types in new quizzes. And also you have a thing called a text block, which is just information, and a stimulus, which I'll show you an example of after we get done looking at the questions. So I'm going to not add a new question here because I've already got that. Already added some. So for the first question we're going to look at is true, false. To configure the question once you've added it, you can click on the edit button. And these options are all going to be here when you create it. We're going to give the question a title. The question stem is what the student's going to be presented with to answer. So here we have new quizzes feature more question types than classic, and then we have true or false. And you're going to click the radio button for whatever is the correct answer. Remember, we talked about earlier the calculator option. You can configure that at the question level. You also have outcomes and banking. These are pretty involved things, and we don't have time to talk about those today. One of the other things that you can do, you can set the point value for the question, and you can also add feedback. So you can give feedback for a correct answer. You can give feedback for an incorrect answer. And you can also provide general feedback regardless of whether they got it right or wrong. And again, that's only going to display if you have that feedback options in settings turned on. The next question type is multiple choice. Now, there are few differences from classic quizzes with multiple choice. We give it a title. We're going to put in a question stem, just like with any other question type. Then we have our answer choices, and you'll see that I've put 6 of them in here. I've got the best possible answer, and I have that one marked as correct. This is not the best answer, but close. This answer is incorrect. This is the worst possible choice. Then I've also included an option for none of the above. Now, I talked about this a little bit while we were configuring settings. If you enable vary points by answer on a multiple choice question, then you're going to get a box to the right of each answer choice where you can set a point value. So for the best answer, I'm going to give them 1 point. If they choose this not quite best answer, but close, I'm going to give them half a point. If they choose this incorrect, I'm going to give 0. This worst possible one, I'm going to say the only way they could have gotten that was by wild guessing. I'm going to make that worth -1. And the reason I included none of the above is I wanted to show you an additional option that this has. You see how you've got this little lock icon beside answer choices. So if we have the shuffle choices turned on, I can actually lock that answer choice in position. So it will shuffle these first 4 answer choices, but it's going to keep none of the above locked in place. That's one really nice thing that we can do in new quizzes that's not an option in classic. Okay, another type of question that we have is multiple answer. This is very similar to multiple choice, except we can have more than one correct answer. Just like with multiple choice, we can lock answer choices into place if we have the shuffle choices enabled. So in this case, I've included the answer choices, all of the above are correct or none of the above are correct. And to keep the shuffling from making those appear in nonsensical positions, I'm going to lock those in place and let the other ones move around. With this question type, you can also set options for partial credit. If you check that box, then what they're going to get is points for every correct answer and deducted points for every incorrect answer, or you can enforce exact match where they have to get exactly the right answers and none of the incorrect answers. So I'm going to leave this one set to exact match and save that. The last question type that we're going to look at in detail, and then I'm just going to show you some examples of the other ones in preview mode, is file upload. So for a file upload question, this is where we're going to have students uploading things like Word documents or PDFs or image files or videos or Excel files. So I'm going to give it a title just like before, enter a stem or any instructions that they need. An option unique to this type of question is you can limit the number of files that they upload. So in this case, we're going to limit it to 2 files. And then we're also going to restrict the file types. So if I only want to see Word documents, PDF, or Excel files, I just put in a list of the file types that I want them turning in, separated by commas. You do not need to include the dots on the file extensions. Okay. Whenever you're editing a quiz, you can preview it from this build page. So if I scroll up to the top and click the preview button, after it loads, we'll be able to toggle through the questions that we've already seen. And here are some new types that we haven't talked about, but I did want to show you examples because we don't have enough time in this workshop to go through how to configure all of them. The first one that we're looking at here is an essay question. You can configure this where it gives them the rich content editor, or you can set it where it only allows text in the box. This is a fill in the blank question, so you can have just an open-ended where they type in their answer. You can have a drop-down selection, or it also has drag and drop type responses. This is a numeric question. So in this, we're going to define a numerical value as the correct answer. And you can also set margins of error for your numerical answers. So say I used to be a physics teacher, and I would always give my students plus or minus 2% on their numerical answers to account for any rounding that they might have done. A formula question, this is really useful if you teach a math-based subject and you're worried about academic dishonesty, because in this problem, that number is going to change for every student. And when I set this up, I created 200 different variables that could go in there, and it uses a formula to calculate the correct answer. And you can actually have multiple variables within a question of this type. It's very useful, but again, because it applies to kind of a narrow band of subjects, we would encourage you to reach out to me if you want to know more about that. There's also a matching question where we can define answer choices that show up for each item to be matched with. We have ordering questions where we can put things in sequential order. We have categorization questions where we can define categories. Here I've done animal, vegetable, mineral. And then our answer choices go into the appropriate boxes. And you can also include distractors that don't belong in any of the boxes. So in order to not be counted wrong, the students would have to leave those out of any of the categories. Finally, the last question type is hotspot. I will caution you about using this type of question. Of all of the question types, this is the one that really has accessibility trouble. So if you have a student who's using a screen reader for any kind of low vision, then we're going to want to provide some kind of alternative assignment for this. But for this question, I've just got an old map of New England, and we're asking them to click where they think the Statue of Liberty is located, and you just click on the map and click submit for your answer. This is a text block. This is just where if you wanted to include a piece of information somewhere in the quiz, like here I'm saying, all right, the next questions are from chapter 6. Like I talked about in settings, if you use text block, it's very important that you have shuffle questions turned off because it will shuffle your text blocks as well. Finally, we have the stimulus. Where a stimulus comes in handy is if you have multiple questions that you want to use the same prompt for. This keeps you from having to type the same prompt over and over again. So I've created a prompt using this little bit from the Raven, and then I've asked a multiple choice question. Once they answer that, you'll see that the stimulus still appears, and they have an essay question, and you can combine and mix and match all the question types you want to appear with one stimulus, and it'll make sure that no matter where it appears on the page, that stimulus will always present with it. With that, I am going to hand things back off to Dave so he can talk briefly about Respondus Lockdown Browser.
Thank you, Tommy. Okay, we're back here at my quizzes page, including the midterm exam that we created earlier. So now I'm going to introduce you to Respondus Lockdown Browser. First thing you'll have to do is probably add it to your course navigation menu. You probably won't see that there. So you can just add that through settings down here. If anybody needs me to show you that, I can do that after this session. But so here we go. We have our 3 quizzes, and I'm going to just click on Lockdown Browser, and notice that all 3 of the quizzes show up in this new environment at this dashboard for Lockdown Browser. Now, Respondus Lockdown Browser is a specialized security-focused web browser designed to prevent digital cheating during online exams. Students, this is important, students must download this special browser on their device to use it. And once you set it to using a lockdown browser, it will only open in that browser. So the first thing I'm going to do for our midterm is I'm going to go into settings, and I'm going to require lockdown browser for this exam. You can set a password. Also, at the same time, do I want to use the Respondus monitor? And that, what that will do is if I check that box, the security feature expands to include automated remote proctoring. By using the student's webcam and microphone to record the testing session and flag suspicious behavior for instructors to review. I know that's a little big brotherish, and that turns a lot of people off, but some feel it's necessary. This will capture video, audio, screen activity, and often includes pre-exam steps like webcam checks or environmental scans first. So when a student begins an assessment in Lockdown Browser, the exam is displayed in full screen mode and cannot be minimized. And the browser removes typical navigation controls, such as copying, printing, visiting other websites, accessing files, launching other applications, and using screen capture tools. Now, the accessing files part brings me back to a question that Marianne Barber just asked in the chat, and that is, can file upload option be used with Respondus Lockdown Browser? I haven't been able to figure out whether that's true or not, but according to some of the sites that I just visited, the answer is that to that is no, that students can access their files, and that includes anything to upload files. So if you do have a quiz question that you want them to upload their file to, it's probably best practice to create another quiz that isn't locked down, where they can take that to upload the file. Just a separate question in a separate quiz. I know that's probably not the best answer, and I will be searching for that answer after this. So I know I went through this very fast, but as you look at the top, you will see that there's a Getting Started tab, including instructions to students that you can provide to them. There's video tutorials, and there's guides and support. And there's also our help desk that would also be able to help with that. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to take my exam, my midterm exam, and I'm going to require both of those things: monitor and lockdown browser, save and close it. And now, when I go back to quizzes, you will see that the title has changed. Now the title includes requires Respondus Lockdown Browser and webcam. And if you do this, it's always good to provide a practice exam for the students to test out on first before you actually make them use that in a real live test. So with that, I will turn this back over to Tommy for closing remarks and possible questions and answers.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Before we move forward, I do want to share some information about the next workshop in this series. The next one is Canvas Essentials Grading. That's going to be presented by Lily and Kathleen. I will paste a link in the chat in just a moment to the sign-up sheet for that training. If you would like to know more about anything that you saw today, please reach out to me or Dave. There's our email addresses, david.denny@unt.edu or thomas.tubbs@unt.edu. I would say that if you, specifically, if you're looking for any help with those numerical or formula questions, that is more my area of expertise. So I'd encourage you to reach out to me directly if you need help with those. With that, we will open the floor up to questions. You can raise your hand or you can type them in the chat.
Mary Barber, I'm going to share my screen real quick for this one to show you how.
Thank you.
Sorry, my microphone messed up. Okay, so I'm back here at the quizzes, and the question was, can classic quizzes be readily converted to new quizzes? And that answer is yes. If you look at my 3 quizzes, and I want to go to the 3-dot menu to the right of the title, you will see a option to migrate. That will migrate it to a new quiz. And actually, I'll just do that just so we can see what it looks like and how fast that is. It usually takes seconds, and there it is. Now, as you can see by the solid rocket ship icon, that is a new quiz now. So it was that fast. And I will unshare now.
I have a follow-up question. If I convert a classic to a new quiz, will my test bank also convert with it as well?
No, you would have to, but you would have to just migrate the banks because there's 2 different types of banks. There's question banks, which is classic quizzes, and then there's item banks, which is new quizzes. So you would just have to migrate one to the other.
Okay, thank you.
And we can help you with that, Mary. I know you use the Lockdown browser because I noticed that in one of your courses once.
Yes, I can find any way to mess things up. So I appreciate your helpfulness every single time.
No problem. You're one of our best customers, Mary. And do we have any more questions? I guess we were so good, Tommy, that we didn't even generate questions. And this session has been recorded or is being recorded. So if anybody needs to refer back to that, it will probably be uploaded in the Teams chat for this session very shortly after the session. And kudos to Todd for figuring out why my quiz tool messed up earlier and gave me that error. It's because I had the IP address and I didn't remove the IP address for the SAGE Testing Center, and I wasn't there. So that's what caused that.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, real quick, I did want to correct one thing. I got a little bit tongue-tied when I was talking about the moderate feature, and I want to make sure that I clarify that so I don't confuse anybody. So on the settings, the additional attempts setting is only available in the course level settings. You can't configure that at the course level. So at course level, the only thing you can give them is time adjustments and reduced answer choices. And the additional attempts is limited, but of course you can also override the time and the reduced answer choices settings at the course level. I just wanted to make sure I cleared that up because I think like I said, I just got a little tongue tied and I didn't want to confuse anybody. All right. Do we have any other questions? It looks like we're good. So thank you everyone for coming. Yep. And feel free to reach out if you have any or if you want any individualized help.
Yes, thank you very much, everybody, for attending.